Hello friends and welcome back. I wanted to have a chance to talk about Yule and why Yule is so important, for pagans in particular. Now, no matter what you call your celebration, as different types of paganism may have different names for what they celebrate. If you are pagan, you likely celebrate the winter solstice. And whether you celebrate Yule, or I believe the Celtic term is Alban Arthan, though I couldn't find an example of the pronunciation for that one, so my apologies if I didn't nail it. Please let me know in the comments section below. Please spell it how it sounds because I'm not so sure on that one. And maybe you celebrate something that I haven't listed here. These pagan celebrations historically have a lot of connections as well. The kind of celebrations being giving gifts, celebrating the incoming light as you are welcoming in the sun because the days are starting to get longer again. You had a really hard winter. Historically, these winters would have been dangerous for families. They would have been really difficult to stay warm and have enough food, and just really trying to survive these dark, cold, bitter months. This turning point of the days getting longer would have been really significant to these people. And so most of these winter traditions around Yule time, which is the term I'm going to keep using here, but again, that's not the only term, depending on what type of paganism you practice. But they often honor the winter solstice. And so while these celebrations are happening, and the intention is to honor the light and the life, you are honoring the light literally and figuratively. Literally because very, very common practices and ways to celebrate are to be awake when the sunrise is happening. And right now that's still late morning for those of you who have a hard time getting up early. But being there to greet the sun when it rises. Figuratively, we honor the sun because there are often many, many candles that adorn the spaces that we're in. There is, of course, the Yule log, which can be burned, and this is more of a ritualistic burning of the Yule log that is offering protection, guiding light, especially if you're in a type of paganism that honors the 12th night, then this may be the tradition for you. Even if you aren't, it has reached into other aspects of paganism to be burnt throughout the winter solstice. We also honor the sun with ornaments. There is no coincidence that ornaments are often round in shape. They're often red or gold or yellow in color. It's not just for the visual appeal against the green of the tree, it's actually because it comes from sun worship, honoring the sun. Most of the calendar holidays of the witches' calendar, pagan calendar, whatever term you're comfortable using, most of them reflect the position of the sun and its effect on the seasons. In fact, if we have the solstices vertical on the calendar, the equinoxes horizontal on the calendar, the diagonal points are actually considered solar festivals. They may also be called lesser sabbats or esbats as well. But again, that depends on your specific type of paganism. A really popular trend right now is also hanging orange slices as orange garlands. And this revolves around the same kind of thing. Oranges need a lot of sunlight to grow. And so they are harnessing the sun's energy. They mimic the sun in appearance by being circular and bright. And while we're celebrating Yule and bringing in this joy of gift giving, it's also a time of feasting and dancing. More signs of winter, of course, are in the Yule tree. The Yule tree, being an evergreen, is representing the sustaining life and hope through the winter. So because everything else is dying off, going brown, and losing its leaves in these very, very cold times, the evergreen stays the same. It stays abundant and full of life. And so bringing the tree inside the home has been a tradition that is reflective of that hope and that continued prosperity through the winter. One way that you can celebrate Yule and prepare for the next year is to cut the bottom off of your Yule tree when Yule is over and it's time to dispose of the tree anyway. When you cut the bottom off, that can be your Yule log for the next year. You may also hang on to some of the boughs because you can use this in a prosperity working or other spell work later on during one of the solar festivals, especially Imul. Historically, these people who celebrated Yule would have been celebrating it based on their own observations, based on their own societal structures, and so it may not have been on exactly the same date. With the modernization of paganism, and thanks to the spring and autumn equinoxes, which are measurable, the winter solstice and the summer solstice will happen during the midpoints between these two, which makes them very measurable as well. In fact, because they all are referenced upon where the Earth is at in its orbit, because of course its orbit is what affects our seasons. And this is why I am so interested in astronomy, not to be confused with astrology. I actually don't know the zodiac that well, but by focusing on the planets and planetary orbits, we can actually gain more information out of our calendar, out of our seasons, and I think it helps us connect a little bit better to when we're doing things and the cycle of life, if you will, by acknowledging also the cycles of the seasons. And also why I have so many videos about planets and their orbits. And speaking of the orbits, I know there is a lot of confusion about when to celebrate Yule. Objectively, the reason there is confusion is because we don't have a perfect calendar. Our calendar is measured at 365 days, and we see how imperfect it is when we measure it against the sidereal calendar year. One sidereal year would be how long it takes the Earth to complete a full rotation and get back to the exact same starting point. Now that actually takes 365 days, 6 hours, and 9.16 minutes. It is not perfect, the calendar we have now. That's why we have a leap year. However, because we are measuring the exact point, or as close as we can get, to a certain point of orbit, a certain point from the sun, because all of these factors affect the seasons and our pagan calendar because they're all tied in together. The result of this is that approximately every 3 years, the winter solstice actually lands on December 22nd instead of the 21st. It is most typically the 21st, and again, this is measurable. And so, as I said, objectively, this is why there is some confusion on when to start celebrating. But subjectively, what does this mean? Absolutely nothing. You can absolutely celebrate whenever you want. If you want to celebrate Yule on the day of Yule, typically that's going to be on the 21st. And maybe it's that odd once every approximately 3 years when it's off, then you've just celebrated Yule on Yule Eve instead. And because Yule is typically celebrated for 3 to 5 days, many people I know celebrate into the new year. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Even if you celebrate a day early in this case, then you have still celebrated on the eve of Yule. So not to worry, don't get too stressed about the crazy details. I just find it interesting. I really like to know about all of the different planetary orbits and patterns. It's definitely not something you have to study if you're not interested in it. But I did want to explain the roots of where the confusion comes from. Please don't be stressed over getting the exact day right, because this time should be filled with love and joy and celebration anyway. So what if you get an extra day? This is a very powerful, joyous time of year, and I'll be sharing some ways to celebrate soon. I'll look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. And that's it for now. Bye!